Hi, I'm Kathy Muehlhauser with the Huron Historical Society in the Huron Public Library. Today is April 11th, 2009, and I'm interviewing Frank Glann for the Huron Oral History Project. Well, hi, Frank.
Hi, Kathy.
You want to tell us how you came to Huron?
Yes, I came to Huron because of the Hearing Playhouse. And it was back in 1955. I'd already had a year at Bowling Green, and I'd heard about the Playhouse. And I was eager to continue working in theater. I did a few plays at Bowling Green, and I knew the directors there. And so the second summer after I'd started at Bowling Green in 1953, I applied for the 1955 company. And so I came to Huron a few years after my ancestors had come here in 1832. So, and of course I didn't...
They had come to Huron?
Yes, the Glanns came to Huron in 1832 from New York, and they came on the steamer here, Henry Clay, out of Dunkirk, and this is the port, and only my great-grandmother could, and the children could ride on the boat, so that my great-great-grandfather and their wagon and their horses and the older boys had to come by wagon, which took them months to get from Dunkirk to Huron in the 1830s. But that's not what I'm talking about here. But anyway.
No, that's good. We like to hear that.
Yeah, all sides of our families, as they immigrated to the West, came to Huron. This was the stopping off place before they went on to wherever they ended up. So I had some kind of roots here. Some of them got to Toledo, and some of them stayed in Lindsay in the Fremont area. But anyway, I came because of the Hearing Playhouse. And I'd heard about it, and it was in its 7th season. And I just knew that it would be a fun thing to do. In that time, we were doing 7 shows in 8 weeks. And did 6 straight shows plus one musical was in there, plus a children's show on matinees. That was our 7th show. So you can imagine what kind of a season that was, an 8-week working season, and doing shows just that rapidly. It was a tremendous experience. And I got to know people here in town very, very quickly. I think the Hearing Playhouse is one of the greatest success stories of a town and a university and a particular project working together. And that very first year, I met people that became my friends. Lily McCormick, who later lived right next door to the house where we live. I mean, she had lived there all her life in that house. And of course, Mac McCormick, RL, who was the superintendent of schools. And Mac was really the catalyst that got the Playhouse started here. Back in 1949, Dr. Frederick Walsh, who was a professor at Bowling Green in the theater, and speech, at that time they just called it speech, who had started theaters in Massachusetts and had worked there, and also with Paul Green started the Lost Colony. At Roanoke Island in North Carolina, which is very famous, has been going on symphonic. They invented symphonic drama, as a matter of fact. After the Second World War, Fred came to Bowling Green and joined the speech department. And talking with students one time, they were talking about his past and how he had been in summer theaters and started summer theaters. And someone asked, why doesn't Bowling Green have a summer theater? And so they said, they got to talking. They said, well, let's go out and scout around. And they did. They went out several weekends. Eventually, they got to Huron. They were very taken by it, because in that day, Huron looked like a New England fishing village. And the lake, along the river, the red barns and all the fishing, was here. And Fred said, it reminds me so much of Massachusetts. I have to find out about this place. Maybe there's a barn or someplace where we could do some summer theater. So he went to the post office, and the person there said, oh, we have a beautiful place, because the Ohio Street School was quite new at that time, because it was only about 8 years old, I think, and it had this wonderful auditorium and this great big stage space, because it was designed for basketball tournaments, which there's never been a space like that, I don't think, for a theater to have. We can have 3 shows up at once because of that space that's there. And so they directed him over to the school, and Mac was there. Mac McCormick was there. And so Fred went in, and Mr. McCormick was very taken with this idea, because he had promised the taxpayers of Huron that this new building, if they supported it, and they did, about 90% voted for it when
Which
it
is,
finally
yes,
went through.
great.
You can imagine what that is, you know, for a school levy to pass at that amount. And he'd promised that it was always going to be a community house. As he envisioned, you know, the basketball tournaments and all these kinds of things. So he picked up on this and was very eager to see if something could be worked out with Bowling Green. So Fred and the students went back to Bowling Green, and the people there were receptive. At that time, the president of Bowling Green was Dr. Frank Prout, who was from Sandusky, who was interested in saying, well, of course we would want to get our presence in Huron. And so the president of the university, along with the people in the speech department, said, Fred, go to it. So they assembled a small company, and by June 29th, 1949, they opened, a beastly hot day. To 13 people, they opened a comedy called John Loves Mary, which we did again for the 50th anniversary for our opening with a full house at that time. And the temperatures were just beastly at that time in June, and no air conditioning, and the humidity was just hanging. They tried to air condition it by putting big tubs of ice in by the proscenium doors and putting fans on them and trying to blow that onto the audience. Of course, it didn't work very well.
Right.
And Fred spent his time backstage giving salt pills to the actors so they wouldn't pass out. In those days, that's what they thought they could do, you know, to help them. And anyway, it took off, and we had some marvelous support. The Dickouts, Stan and Hilda Dickout lived right across the street. Stan was the druggist in town. He kept long hours there at the drugstore, but never missed a show. As long as those people were alive, they never, ever missed a show. And sometimes they would come several times because they wanted to help fill out the audience. And of course, there was always free ice cream from the drugstore, these kinds of things. And this is what happened. People recognized here, I think, in town that we were a struggling, or the Playhouse people were a struggling group and getting started, and there was a pride there. And anyone, I think, that knew Mr. McCormick knows that when he got an idea, he took it to heart, and he held on to it until it came to fruition. So right away, he found housing for the people, and the Harts had a house out in Grand Forest, right on the, that was the Hart Meat Market people here in town at that time. And right on the lake, and the men stayed out there, and there were deep ditches at that time, and sometimes going back at night, they get so tired they just lie down in the ditches and sleep, and they wouldn't even make it back. They might have had a little help, you know, and being tired, but they worked very long hours. And the women were housed down at Henry and Regina Morris's cottages right on the lake down here by the park. And that turned into eventually something that went on for more than 35 years. We used the Morris cottages, and several of them. And Mrs. Morris was so protective of the Playhouse. Nobody could say anything bad about the Playhouse here in town. I don't think too many people did. Well, there probably were some people who didn't like us. But the thing was that the community accepted the young people at that time. And I think they were young, pretty young at that time. And they got behind it. We went into people's houses, and we got furniture and props and draperies and costumes. And the Rouse and the Gunzenhausers were just a block away. They had a big house full of Victorian things. And then Anna Gunzenhauser had the dry goods store on Main Street. And the upstairs in that I don't think she ever threw anything away. It was still full. I was the costumer the second year I was here in 1957, and I'd go to Miss Gunzenhauser if I was looking for something, you know, from period. She had the celluloid collars, she had spats, she had lace cuffs, she had women's shoes from 1900 on. They're up in the third floor, which was not open to the public usually, and you know. The shoehorn, the button for the button shoes, yeah, the shoe hook. I'm saying the wrong thing here, but anyway, you get the idea.
Yes.
So this was a wonderful source, and people were just so helpful. I think there were times we were doing shows that probably were costumed, and we had stage dressings that were from all over Shaska Beach. There just was such a wonderful outpouring of support. from the town, and there was that kind of pride. I think that's what made the Playhouse go. And we needed each other. That was there was that mutual need and that mutual pride. And some of that I think has stayed here, but as time has gone on, the Playhouse became more independent, or Bowling Green was more independent, and we started trucking in more and more. And we haven't been going into people's homes quite the way we were to say, I want your gloves.
Right.
Or when I was working in scene design, if I went to somebody's home, I was casing the place to see. And it wasn't just here. Oh, the mayors, and Beverly and Jack Mayer had a big house on Columbus Avenue. And Sandusky, and Jackie was in the Playhouse the year she got to be Miss Ohio, and then Miss America, and Beth was there. And so we discovered that the mayors had a house full of Victoriana. And that lasted as long as they had a house. I would go over there with a truck and say, I want that furniture, and I want that furniture. And people were just wonderful to help out with that. So anyway, that first company, there was only 24 people, I believe, in the whole company. Imagine doing all those shows in the heat. They built all the sets, they did all the costume, they did everything. That's always been the case. Right. That even though we hire an acting company, we hire tech people, everybody does everything. And we do some things that are probably unusual, like we run our own commissary, and there are 3 meals a day that are served right there. They need to eat there because we have such little time, good meals ready for them. But everybody works in the kitchen. Everybody does everything. Everybody works in the costume shop or works in the box office. So it's a wonderful experience. We say, total theater for the people that come in. That first season were some people who went on to do some very good things. Richard Baumman was in that company. He turned out to be one of the top agents in Hollywood. Had wonderful stories about all the things, the people that he started, the people that started with him from the beginning, like James Earl Jones, stayed with him until Richard died. He still was there with him. And he started young actors like Ted Danson and Al Pacino and Travanti, these people, and Nancy Marchand was with him all the way through, Seda Thompson. Dick started here at the Hearing Playhouse. Wow. And of course, he was a great success story. He was first an actor on Broadway, didn't do very well, and got in the movies and did things with Donald O'Connor and Francis Goes to War or something like that. But his real talent was being an agent. Well, we had many people who have gone on, who have started here at the Playhouse, that have gone on as performers, as technicians, as designers. We have stage managers on Broadway right now. We have producers that are out there, company managers. A lot of our people are in touring companies all over the country, and they keep getting jobs, and they network with each other. Because they've been to the Hearing Playhouse, they have that advantage. I see that Lynn Wintersteller is going to be coming back and singing this winter with the Cleveland Symphony, and she's one of our dearest friends. She's been successful as a singer on Broadway, and a good career in the performing end of it. But there are also all those people who are in educational theater, who are writing books, who are doing things behind the scenes. We got a lot of our recommendations of people to come to our company from people who are teachers. That are maybe deans of colleges even, and heads of departments who want to send people here because the program is so good. And not only our own people, but like the director of theater at Kent State wants to send her people here, even though she has a competing theater. Says, you go to the Hearing Playhouse, you're going to get an experience there that you won't get anyplace else, for certain people, So the reputation has been built up over the last 60 years. And we're hoping to keep it going for quite a few more years from now on. We've had some really famous people come out. Ron Liebman has won every major award except the Best Actor Academy Award. But all of the others, he's got Emmys and Tony Awards and the Golden Globes, and for all the things that he's done, mostly in New York, but a lot of things in Hollywood too. But he's just one of the people that people may recognize the name from.
So what is your involvement? Obviously, you stayed with Bowling Green. In what capacity?
Well, maybe foolishly, but I've always been sort of attached to Bowling Green in one way or the other. Even when I spent 8 years in Missouri, at Cape Girardeau, Missouri, and doing theater there at Southeast Missouri University, and to even times when I was in New York City, and it wasn't here for the summer. But I have had about 43 seasons I have had with the Playhouse in the last 50-some years. So it's been a wonderful experience. I always look forward to it. We don't make any money. I mean, personally, it's not, that's not what's in it. Jan, my wife, is the managing director and has been the managing director since the early 90s. She's got the longest record. So it's been a family affair. Our 2 sons have grown up in the Playhouse and, of course, are kind of related to show business. One son is in music and directing and conducting at Kent State, and teaches there and has touring groups. And the other is in New York City, attempting to really make it as an opera singer, but he's doing things there. So our family's been here. We've grown up they have grown up here, and that's one of the reasons, I suppose, why we have kept with it. Jan and I came back to Bowling Green to do our PhD work after we'd been gone for a while. And so since we came back in 1967, we've been in Ohio. And we have been solidly with the Playhouse. We were summers there. In fact, Jan and I actually met at the Playhouse in 1965 and got married in 1966. And so our honeymoon was really in one of Zetta Dickinson's garages. But anyway, we've had this attachment and continued. And of course, we have jobs at Firelands College. That's an interesting thing, too, that Firelands College didn't come along until after the Playhouse was well established. There are a number of people that said the reason that Firelands was located here was because people in the area had a very good feeling about Bowling Green, and they wanted it when they started the campaign to see if they could make money to bring in Firelands. People were supporting it, and lots of times they said, oh, the Hearing Playhouse is already here. So I think that we had something to do with the location of BGSU Firelands as a
Now,
college.
what does the future hold for the Playhouse?
Well, I hope what it holds is that we will continue to do quality shows. We will bring in people, because it's an educational situation, that we will continue to offer total experiences. That is, that people, they learn how to work in a costume shop, in a scene shop, if they don't already have those kinds of skills. Or sometimes some of them have never worked in a kitchen before. And maybe I should say something about our package before I answer the rest of that question. Is the package we've been able to offer our students for a long time is not only that they get some credit for university credit, one way or the other, but they get free room and board. So we've always done the housing, and we've fed the people. And something that's rather unique, we've always had a company doctor. Since 1950, we've had the Williamsons. Dick Williamson is a fine Shakespearean actor, and for over 40 years, I guess, appeared on the stage with us, but also was our doctor. And the Williamson office was always been just a few blocks away, so that part of our package is that we get free office calls. Not from we pay a fee. Now Tom Williamson is our company doctor. The Playhouse pays a fee, but the students that are registered or are working with us don't have to pay for doctor visits, and that's very good, because all sorts of things happen. When there are accidents in the shop, there are sore throats, and there's bronchitis, and you don't know what's going to. We've had measles, and we've had mumps, and we've had chicken pox, and all kinds of things. And it was wonderful when Dick Williamson was the doctor, because he was interested. He'd come over, and he'd be in the dressing rooms or the shower rooms with the actual patients, right. The were his patients. And I think he just liked to be there, for one thing. He was visiting, but he was also in rehearsal at the shows, too. That was kind of a unique thing.
Oh, you were discussing Dr. Williamson. Do you want to continue with that, please?
Oh, what a marvelous person. I just had wonderful experiences with him. And he was also my physician, and if I would go in, he was always quoting Shakespeare. He had something to say, and mostly from Hamlet. And we would rehearse together, and we would do things, you know, and I'd go in there for some medical purpose, and pretty soon we were doing a scene from a show or something like that. But he was so very interested in theater. In fact, he had to make up his mind when he left Ohio Wesleyan, whether he was going to go to medical school, because he had an offer to be an actor, and work with a company. I think he'd worked with a company in Michigan anyway. Which direction he was going to go, because he had these two loves. To be an actor, specifically, he loved Shakespeare, and which I do too, and or going to medical school, and he decided he'd better go to medical school, but he never gave up the theater. All his life, even when he was down in North Carolina, he was still working in Chapel Hill and various places in theater right up to the very end. So.
Well, that's great. He could do both.
A wonderful, wonderful influence, and a role model for our young people here, as many people in the community were.
You want to tell us a little bit more about the housing?
Yes. As I said, the Playhouse has always paid, you know, for the housing for the people that are in the company. And after the first year, I think for about 35 years or so, we all housed in several of the cottages, or the one was a full house, that was the Morris property. After Henry died, Regina kept us there for many, many, many years, as long as she was around. And then it was no longer possible to stay there. And by working out with the school board and the superintendent, we moved into Shawnee School across the river. And at that time, we kept a room there just for storage of things that stayed there all year round. And also then in the summertime, we would come in, bring in our own beds, because we have our own beds, and room dividers and the dressers and the racks and whatever, to set up bedrooms, dormitory style bedrooms, take over a number of them. And then we would put air conditioners in the windows. And so it was quite a setup. And after a while, it became, you know, a routine, you know how to do this, especially if you have people that are coming back again. And then we have to move everything out again. And everything had to go someplace else. After a time, we weren't able to keep a storage room in Shawnee, because the space was needed for other things. So we had a great technical director, Steve Boone, who built lofts in the Quonset building that's behind McCormick School. And our storage is there. I mean, all the beds and everything, and so much of the Playhouse equipment stays there in that building. We can't keep the mattresses there. We have another storage space for them. Obviously, we don't want vermin and you know, temperature control. So there are a few things, and some green room furniture that people have donated to us, couches and things like that we use at the Playhouse. The green room is like the theater lounge, and the students need that place. And so some of the things stay in another storage area that we rent. But this year we are moving into a different facility, so we'll be housed in Woodland School rather than Shawnee, because of some changes in the building. It was necessary to make that move. So we're eagerly looking for how that's going to be. And the school board people and the superintendent and the people that have been helping us have just been wonderful in finding a place. I think they're as happy as we are. I said, look what we've done for you. Aren't you great? Because they gave us a tour a couple of months ago, say, look what we can do. And this is going to, I think it'll work out fine.
Great. And what season is this coming up?
We're going into the 61st season. We've had 60 successful seasons, and the admissions are up to around 11,000 for the shows. Now, we don't do as many shows as originally. That first season was a real killer. It got whittled down to only 7 shows, including a children's show, for many years, and then now we're doing 5 shows in an 8-week season. But it's still something that we push very hard, you know, to get everything done and accomplished in that time. It's some of the actors or the people that come in say, this is boot camp for theater. There's hardly any time to do anything else, and that's good. They can concentrate on what's happening. There have been times when The Marines landed in Beirut and we didn't know anything about it, a few years ago. There have been things that have happened of national consequences, and we're so concentrated that we didn't get the word right away because we didn't have time to turn on the television or read a newspaper. So it's, that works both ways, but it shows you the kind of dedication that we have to have. Because we always have to be ready for the audience.
Right.
And by the time the audience comes in, we're all clean and smiling. And even if we're dead tired and we're hating the world and whatever, and we're feeling dirty inside, we can't show that at all. We have to be fresh scrubbed and cheerful. And of course, that goes on through the day too, because we have a lot of visitors that come in, and they're there doing their business too. So we've been. I think good. There was a study just completed. This is not a new study, but the update of the impact of the arts in Northwest Ohio is $25 billion.
Whoa.
I think that is something that people don't probably recognize. All the things that go in. Of course, this is a whole area. It's all aspects of the arts. But that's a staggering figure, and I think we contribute somewhat to that. And we've been very well treated here in Huron, and I hope we've been a good guests here also with the shows that we've done. And some things happened over the years. 1966 was the time when Mac McCormick was retiring, and he did one last effort, and that was he went to Frank Wilkes and said, "You're going to air condition that building," at the Playhouse expense. We paid, over a period of years, we paid into and paid all of the expense of getting it air conditioned. And it wasn't an easy thing to do, to have the auditorium and stage area air conditioned. And by trial and error, it got done. But it was paid for by the Playhouse. As we've also done, we have rewired the building because we've needed to have stronger current for our air conditioners and things like that. So that's been the Playhouse.
And you've added curtains and things like that.
Yes, rigging, tracks. We have carpeted the auditorium, and sometimes just provided a lot of labor. A number of years ago, back in the mid-'60s, I guess, the seats in the auditorium were going to be refurbished. And there wasn't going to be time to get it done, so the Playhouse company came in and knocked all the seats apart and put the slip covers on and rebuilt them. Sometime around, I can't remember exactly where it was, I think maybe the early 80s, the number of seats changed with new seating. We went from 570 seats to 507. People got bigger,
right?
And the seats had to be bigger in those days than what they were, originally. And so that's changed. So we don't have as much space in there, and so we can never match the record attendance, which was for Bye Bye Birdie in 1962, because we don't have the seats anymore. But we're doing very well, I think. We started doing musicals the first year I came, and we started doing one musical, Annie, Get Your Gun, the first year that I came to the Playhouse, and we did one musical for a number of years, and then we started doing a little bit more, and now we do 3 musicals because they're popular, and we do play to popular fare. We have done Shakespeare, and we've done all kinds of plays, but nowadays people seem to want comedies and mysteries and musicals. They're very, very expensive, and they're hard to, they're harder to do because there's so much staging and costuming and all the aspects of the rehearsal. A big show like Brigadoon last year, it's a dancing show,
right?
And it only gets one rehearsal period a day. Our schedule is that we have a rehearsal in the morning, in the afternoon, and in the evening if we're not doing a show. So we have 3 shows going at once, and that's why the big space that we have there, having one set facing out, the proscenium into the house is excellent, but we can have 2 other sets upstage and in rehearsal on those actual sets or as they're being built. This has been something I don't think happens anywhere.
Right.
I don't know any place else that has that kind of a facility, so that's worked out very well to us. And of course, the scene shop then is closed. It's now a band room, so when we come in now, we have to change it completely, put in our own floor over top of the carpeting, and put plastic up and down the walls and cover everything in there. So it's a complete transformation. It used to be an industrial arts shop, and so that worked well. But now we make that transformation. So there's a lot to do in the setup. Yes.
What about this year, though? I understand there were a little bit of financial, not difficulties, but things have changed with the
Well, what's
financing.
changed is the economy. The economy has changed for the state of Ohio, and I think everyone's aware that we're in fairly dire situation here, all around, which has affected the state university. And the state is not doing really a whole lot of support as much as they used to do. I think they say about 17% of the budget maybe comes from the state anymore. And also Bowling Green State University has had some reversals. Things have happened so that there isn't as much support coming from the university as we've had in the past. So some things have had to be changed. We're making changes that are going to be very workable, I think. But we're cutting corners, and we're going to have a smaller company than we've had, because you can imagine feeding and housing and having all those people there. There's quite an expense there. So we've had to cut down on that. We've had to cut down on giving the free credit. We were giving 12 hours of credit for free that we can't now because it's so expensive. We've had to start paying other kinds of fees to the university that we didn't have to pay before, because the university doesn't have any money. It doesn't have the money, I should say. And so we are getting, I think, wonderful support from the community. The idea that something might happen to the Playhouse has been greeted with, nothing can happen, you know, we can't lose the Playhouse, you know.
Right.
This from people here in the area. And there's just been such an institution, and people look forward to it, you know. And we have people coming in, when the last days of the Playhouse, what am I going to do for the rest of the summer?
Yeah.
So it's that. It's also the great educational opportunity that it's been. It's just so many things why the Playhouse should continue. So we're seeking more and more support from individuals and groups and the various funds that are available, and I think I think it's going to work out. But again, we're relying upon the help from the wonderful community that we've always had, you know, one way or the other. We don't have Anna Gunzenhauser anymore to give us things out of her store. And incidentally, she said something that got into the front pages of the Erie County Reporter when the school bond issue was coming up. She said, Main Street is for the new school, and I don't care who knows it.
Good for her.
So it was that kind of spirit, you know, it's been behind the idea of schools and the Playhouse. And
I wish you all the luck for this season, and hopefully there's many more to come.
Thank you.
And thanks for talking to us.
Well, I've always liked to talk about the Playhouse, and it's very dear to me, and as it is to many people's hearts, I believe.
Thanks.
Thank you.